everyone, and good evening, everyone, and welcome. We are so thrilled to host our legislative roundtable to finish off the Vermont Network's 2022 Virtual Legislative Advocacy Day. Advocates across our state have come together throughout the day today, and we've kept the best for last this evening. Tonight, we have the honor and privilege of hosting a roundtable of legislative leaders, survivors, and advocates to talk together about policy solutions to issues impacting survivors of domestic and sexual violence. My name is Sarah Robinson, and I'm the Deputy Director at the Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. And shortly, we'll be introducing our incredible roundtable participants. Of the many issues facing Vermonters, including housing, poverty, employment, racial equity, health disparities, and substance misuse, each one is impacted by the reality of domestic and sexual violence. We know that thousands of Vermonters experience domestic and sexual violence each year, and each one of those survivors exists in a constellation of community. And our communities in Vermont aren't immune from violence, including rising tides of gender-based violence, especially recent events in Vermont targeting the LGBTQ community. From the smallest towns to the largest cities in our state and across every county, survivors are navigating struggle, joy, resilience, and healing. And whether we know it or not, survivors are our friends, family members, neighbors, and colleagues. So we welcome you tonight to our dialogue about what our small state is doing to impact the lives of survivors and how survivors and activists can make their voices heard in Montpelier. We have members of our Survivors Uplift, which is a statewide advocacy group, here in the Zoom webinar with us to ask questions. We're also streaming live tonight on Facebook for members of the public to watch and ask questions as well. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to my colleague, Jessica Barquist, to introduce our incredible roundtable and get us started. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to be able to have this discussion with you all tonight. As the network's policy and organizing director, one of the best parts of my job is being able to connect our legislators and our policymakers with survivors and advocates in dialogue together to make meaningful and lasting change. These conversations are always powerful for everyone involved, and it is our pleasure to be able to invite so many of you to join us in this discussion tonight. So if you are with us in the webinar, please introduce yourselves in the chat and use that space for any questions that you might have as we go through our discussion. And the same if you're joining us on Facebook Live, we'd love to have you introduce yourselves and join us through the discussion there as well. And I'm going to start us off tonight, obviously, by introducing our panelists and asking them each why they are here tonight. And by that, I mean, why are victims and survivors issues important to you? And after I introduce the panel to you, I'm going to turn the discussion over to our panelists and let them ask each other questions and be in dialogue with one another. So without further ado, first up in our discussion tonight, we have our pro tem, Becca Balint. Becca Balint is a senator from Windham County and is the first woman in LGBTQ Senate pro tem. She is also running for Congress. So Pro Tem Balint, thank you so much for being with us. Why are you here tonight?
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. All right. Well, it's such an honor to be here with all of you. And I'm here really because of the incredible work that you've all done and the great respect I have for the network, all the work that you do day in and day out, and the insight that you bring into what holds our families and communities together here in Vermont. And unfortunately, also what tears them apart. And in September, the Speaker of the House and I had a chance to talk to representatives of the network as part of our statewide effort to really hear from different pockets of our community that may not always get their voices heard. And I want to share some of the quotes that came out of that conversation that really resonated with me. And I feel like they revealed so much about this incredible group. Here are just a few of the things that you said to us. Our organizations are often the thread that pulls together other organizations and looks at the big picture in somebody's life. You also said, you're hearing a drumbeat on prevention because we see these harms over and over again. It's like that movie Groundhog Day. It's like that every day. We need to work differently to actually end domestic and sexual violence. And the last one, someone at one of our discussions said, I've been a broken record about how if we funded housing, if we funded basic needs, we could truly be doing our work. We all need work addressing trauma and healing beyond just meeting basic needs. So all of you and your dedication have brought me here tonight. I'm honored to be here with all of you, and I'm eager to continue this conversation. And I know Jill was running late, but I think she has joined us, and she apologized for being late. So thank you so much. I'm really eager to hear this conversation and to be part of it.
You're not late, Madam Speaker. You are right on time. Next up on our panel is Speaker Jill Krawinski. Jill is the 4th female to hold the position of Speaker of the House, and she represents Chittenden County. Madam Speaker, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And our opening question is, why are you here tonight? Why do victims and survivors issues matter to you?
Thank you. It's so great to be here with all of you. And I apologize for being late. And I'm dealing with a sinus thing. So I apologize for my voice, but I wouldn't miss this event because it's so important. And I have a long history of working on issues that empower and support women. And when it comes to issues around domestic violence, in my years working at Planned Parenthood and on the Human Services Committee at the State House, and what has inspired me to do this work, to pursue leadership positions to help advance causes and issues that help all of us, especially those who are most vulnerable or need the most help and can't get it. And so 2 things. First off, I really want to hear from all of you. I want to know what's going on in your communities, what's happening in your families, what's working, what's not working. That is super important to me. And secondly, I have been dealing the past several months with my own stalker, and I have never, and it's not exactly the same with experience that many of you are going through, but just in this time that I have been going through the court system and mental health system and all of these different aspects, there's one thing to hear about a process and a problem, and it's another thing to experience it and understanding what that means when you don't, you're waiting to hear back from the court and you still haven't heard back and you don't know why. The fact that, no one has an answer for you when you're looking for help. The fact that it's really hard to find access to mental health right now and to get counseling that you need when you need it. And so navigating this process has really opened up my eyes to what so many people are going through and has made me more persistent and tenacious in dealing with these issues and being there for everyone. So thanks again for having us here.
Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your story with us. Next up, I'm going to introduce Kelsey. Kelsey is a domestic violence survivor and a member of our Survivors Uplift Vermont Action Group. Hi, Kelsey. Thanks for being here.
Hi, so excited to be here. So before I even give my introduction, I just want to say to both of you, Madam Speaker and Senator Ballant, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your lived experience. That is so important for those of us that have the privilege to be able to do so, to speak, that maybe represent more privileged areas of our community. I think that's so powerful, and I really appreciate you doing that. It means a great deal to me. And why am I here? I'm here because almost right on what you mentioned, Senator Ballin, about the desperate need for ongoing trauma and healing beyond immediate basic needs. And my lived experience as a survivor is very real, and that's something that I will always carry with me, but it's what I've experienced on my way out that led me to start showing up, and why I will continue to show up. The stigma that we face as survivors, it doesn't end. It doesn't end when we leave and we're in crisis, and we do need support, and we do deserve that support. But it is a lifelong battle, and that is why we earned the title survivors. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I'll continue to show up. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelsey. Next up, we have Jess. Jess is a sexual violence survivor and another member of our Survivors Uplift Action Group. Welcome, Jess. Will you share quickly why you're here tonight?
Yeah, well, thank you, everyone. I have tears in my eyes just listening to each of you, because this is so empowering. Jill, before I jumped in, I wanted to say that one of the things that you had mentioned is your situation is not the same or as hard, or is not, it's easier, is kind of what you were alluding to, than what some of us have been through. And that's not true. We're all going through something really difficult, and your situation is no better or worse. So kudos for you. Thank you for sharing. But I'm here today to eradicate rape. And that's a bold statement. In March of 2021, just a few months after moving across country and following a big dream from St. Louis to Vermont, a newer friend had drugged and raped me. And this had thrown me unwillingly into a judicial and health system that did equal amounts of harm to me than the rape did itself. And that's a big thing. And I sometimes make the comment that, well, at least the rape I couldn't remember. And I know that sounds like a morbid joke, but I remember everything about the health system. I remember everything about the situations with the police. And I know that I've always heard the term, the system is flawed. But the fact that I was being told this by police officers and Cousy investigators and healthcare workers and advocates and legislators, the very people who make up this system, were telling me that the system is flawed. I don't care anymore. We deserve better. And I don't care. I know that there's, a lot of people that are in this industry, that help survivors, that selflessly serve and help us. And that's wonderful, like the Vermont Network, like the wonderful people on here right now. But we need to do better, because it's not enough. And I know that I'm also here today because police officers, because healthcare workers, because these advocates, these legislators that work these tireless amounts of hours, they're burnt out too. We need to help them too, so they can care for us survivors. Now, lastly, my rapist is a repeat offender. He was awaiting the judicial process to unfold for violent offenses against another woman, and he had the opportunity to drug and rape me in that time. Now, I'm a mother of 2 young children. I'm in my mid-30s. I know a lot about trauma and the brain and sexual assault. I understand these things, but I cannot fathom living in a world and handing the world to my 2 young children, knowing that rapists are more protected than survivors. Let that sink in. My rapist was more protected than me, and I was innocent.
Jess, for that introduction and for sharing your story with us. I'm going to keep us moving though, because we have a lot to get to. And I do want to introduce, last but not least, Avaloy Lanning, who is the Executive Director at New Story Center, which provides direct services to victims and survivors of violence in Rutland. Welcome, Avaloy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and including me in this panel of amazing women, strong women, and I'm humbled by you all, and so appreciative of you sharing your experience and your expertise and your fierceness with us all. And I think it's amazing. I'm here tonight because I work with a group of amazing, fierce funny, passionate women who believe that no one in our community should experience violence. And no one in our community, once they've experienced violence, should continue to have the experience that Jess had, in which they are re-victimized by a system that should be in place to help them. And that is why News Story Center exists. That's what we're there for. We're there to help. We're there to support. We're there to listen. We're there to believe, and to walk with survivors in along their journey. They get to tell us what that journey is, and we're there to walk with them. And lastly, I'm a member of a community. I'm a member of this Rutland County community, of the Vermont community, of this community of women, and none of us are safe unless all of us are safe. And I believe that firmly. And I was given a really loud mouth. I don't know, it was my Texas upbringing or my mama or whoever it was that gave me this really loud mouth. And I have a responsibility to use it. And so I've been guided by some pretty brilliant people along the way that helped me and continue to help me to use that voice. And so I'm going to keep using it as long as I've got it.
Thank you, Evelyn. Wow, so much rich discussion already just in our introductions. But now that we know who we are and why we're all here, I am going to turn it over to our panelists to ask each other questions. And I'm going to turn it to Jess first.
Well, hello, panelists. So tell me, what is the policy work that you are most proud of, or you feel that has had, I guess, the most impact for survivors this session? Tell us a little bit about that.
Madam Speaker, do you want to take this one first?
Sure, I'm happy to. I have to say this is a very difficult question because there's so many different policy areas that we've been working on, from mental health to trying to fix the challenges in our judicial system, other supports that we've put into our budget. I think the one that is weighing on me the most right now is around the work around S30 and firearms. You know, it is incredibly scary what we are seeing around gun violence around this country. And I keep on hearing across, the state, well, thank God it's not a problem here. Or, it's really not that big of a deal. And it is a big deal, and it is a problem, and it is something that we have to address. And that's why I'm really proud of the work that we did around gun safety, around closing the Charleston loophole, around the protections for healthcare providers. I think that is just really incredibly important. So I look to that first, but I think on the national level, our work around abortion protection, and with Prop 5, our reproductive liberty amendment is also crucial given the status of the Supreme Court and what we're seeing there. So that's what comes to mind. Thank you for the great question.
Thank you.
Kelsey, do you want to share next?
Yes, well, I will agree and echo with Madam Speaker on S30, and I'm just so happy and grateful for all of the work that went in over many years of work. And I am very passionate about protections around relief from abuse orders. I continue to rely upon law enforcement and the judicial system to uphold my relief from abuse order, to keep myself and my children and my community safe. More than half of the homicides in our state are related to domestic violence. And this is a very real and dangerous threat. When I thought that I knew the level of danger I was in when I decided to leave, it became very clear very quickly that I was not fully aware until I sought that temporary RFA and my abuser was served. And it was in that period of time that there were threats of using gun violence and of killing himself or killing someone else. It was during that time that I realized that my life was truly at risk. And even beyond that, RFAs are just a few pieces of paper, really. And if if law enforcement and the community does not have the weight to actually uphold them, it really is no protection at all. So that's something that I just really urge people to try to continue to wrap their minds around that the perpetrators may seem to be mild-tempered and understanding, oh, yes, yes, I get it, I'll stay away, but that's not what we are experiencing as the victim behind closed doors. The stalking and the threats to our lives escalate greatly. So it is just imperative that across the state, all victims are protected and judges are aware that, yes, we can put this in the order that firearms are removed. So I'm so happy the work that was put into that. Thank you, thank you. And I think that's all I have on that.
Evelyn, do you want to follow up next?
Sure. I echo what's been said, and would also like to say I'm hugely encouraged by the investment that has gone into housing for survivors this session. It is, that's one of the biggest barriers that survivors we work with face, having somewhere safe to go, somewhere safe beyond shelter, beyond emergency shelter, having that long-term housing solution that can, at least for a period of time, and so through using the ARPA funds or through using the BRAP funds. And Jess, you probably have to, Jessica, you'll have to step in, and I can't ever remember what those are, the BRAP. I get them all the acronyms turned around, but those funds that allow survivors, we can find the housing for them, help them find their housing, and that they can not worry about that piece for a while. It's not 30 days, it's longer. The investment is longer than that, and it's so important. We're talking about people who are having to rebuild their lives free from violence. Think about living, and for them and for their children and their families, and just not having to worry about that for a while. Worry about what work is going to look like for you. Worry about making sure you and your kids are having some fun, making sure that you can relax, that you can build a home, that you can do all of that, not worrying about where's my rent money coming from? Am I going to have to take 3 jobs to be able to pay the rent, to get the apartment, to get away? And it just builds and builds and builds. So I am so encouraged by this investment in housing, and I hope that it continues, and I hope that we really, as a state, continue to look at long-term housing solutions for survivors, because it is really that piece that is just so needed and so valuable to help them move on to safety.
Thank you. Senator Ballin, you want to finish this up here?
Yes, I'd be happy to. And, a lot of what's been said are things that I had down that were important to me and felt like we had done great work. Certainly all the work that we've done on firearms, not just this past year, but, when the speaker and I were both majority leaders, we also moved significant legislation on firearms, and at a time when people said it couldn't be done. And so I'm very proud of that work. Certainly incredibly proud of the housing investments we've made. We know that when we want to keep Vermonters safe, one of the first things we have to think about is, do they have safe, secure, affordable housing? And so our investments in housing, and also our investments in the general assistance program, making sure that people looking for emergency shelter have that shelter. So one of the things, so I'm just reiterating what everybody said, but I also want us to think about how there's work that we do that we don't necessarily see as being connected to this issue that I feel really is. And one is around minimum wage increases that we've done for many years, because we know most of the folks, the majority of people on minimum wage in Vermont are women. A lot of them are single moms. Many of those women are just trying to piece things together. They're in very precarious financial situations. We know that there's overlap between domestic abuse and precarious financial situations. So that is important work that we've done together as well, the speaker and I, on making sure there is firmer safety nets for women in the workforce. something that's on my radar screen going forward, unfortunately, I won't be here, but I know it's something the speaker also cares about, is the increased level of violence against trans women. And that is incredibly concerning. And the climate that we're in nationally has made it even more terrifying. And the last thing that I want to say is, Jill mentioned it in passing, but it is also incredibly important, the mental health financial supports that we're giving. I saw a study yesterday about the increasing rates of depression, self-harm, and suicide, specifically among young adult women. And so that is concerning. We're not, we're still getting the data about what's that about, but we have our work cut out for us coming out of, I say coming out of the pandemic because we're still in it, but that there is this wave of need around trauma and isolation that we're going to have to be focused on, whether it's here in the state, or if I'm lucky enough to represent you in Congress, certainly we'll have a lot of my own energy put into raising that issue and making sure we have those supports at the federal level. So thanks,
Thank
Jessica.
you. Yes, so much great work has already happened and there's still so much more to do. Ava Lloyd, do you want to ask your question next?
I do. Violence is so often interconnected with many of the other issues, just as Senator Ballant was saying, and issues like economic insecurity and housing. And I'm wondering, how do we ensure that we consider Vermonters that have experienced violence in our work on housing or other economic issues? How do we make sure that population is included when we're having those discussions?
Senator Ballant, you want to start us with this one?
I'm getting a little note that my internet is unstable, so I apologize if I start sounding like a robot. One of the things that I feel most proud of the work that the speaker and I have done together is the way that we approached doing our outreach around the state, around how to spend the federal dollars. And we had a lot of help from a really terrific consultant, Molly, what's her last name?
Loomis.
Jill, do you remember?
Loomis.
Molly Loomis was amazing. And I mention it because I feel like it's a model that can be used going forward on these issues, whether it's housing, whether it's workforce development, that it's not enough just to hear from the frequent flyers who come into the State House who feel like they have a place at the table. We really want to hear from people out in the communities. And the way that we do that is by putting the feelers out and having folks within the network saying, you need to speak with these people. We'll pull together a group here, and that you need to know that that system, that structure is going to be there, not just as a one-off in this this effort that we did in hearing from all of you, but ongoing. And so we have done, as I mentioned, we have done significant work on minimum wage and housing. But I also think that, we need to be hearing from folks about, what are the supports that we need within schools and community to help folks deal with ongoing trauma. We do have an incredible shortage of counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists. So it touches workforce development. It touches, economic development. How are we going to meet the growing need that we're hearing from within the communities? And so this is a great opportunity for us to hear from all of you. What are we getting right? What are we getting wrong? How can we be better at making sure that all of you and the folks who have been touched by these issues really feel like you have a place, an important place in the discussion to help us pass better policy?
Madam Speaker, you want to go next?
Sure. Well, I agree with everything the pro tem said, so I'm not going to repeat that because I think those are really important points that she made, and I fully agree with those. What I'll add on to that is, in our work as leaders, we are trying to create an environment that is more friendly and welcoming for people to come and testify. So we learned a lot when we did our small group meetings talking about the ARPA funds and our once in a lifetime opportunity with them. And by being in a safe space with people where people felt comfortable sharing their stories and asking questions was really, as simple as it sounds, it was a really good reminder for us that not everyone feels that they can do that in committee rooms at the State House. So if we want people with lived experiences to help us, guide us, and answer questions and engage on policy, we need you at the table, and we need you to feel comfortable being there and being able to have that conversation. So in doing that, we've done work around creating templates for witnesses so that people know how the room works and how much time you'll have and what the process looks like to help it be less intimidating. We've done trainings with our members about emotional intelligence and how to be supportive and be an ally when tough situations happen in committee rooms or on the floor. And then we've done trainings with the leadership of committees and the leadership of the House. And I think they've done some in the Senate as well, to really focus on how to be engaged around the table to ensure that people are being heard and feel safe and respected in doing that. Because, for us, after working in the building for a while, you lose that feeling of being intimidated, or, you come in and you're like, let's do this. This is not the case for everyone, especially with survivors who are coming in to share really hard, tough stories and being in a vulnerable place and a very political atmosphere. So we can't do really good work unless we're creating an environment that people feel safe and secure in to help us do that work. And so I think that's another piece of the work that we've been doing in addition to the policy, to have people with their experiences be part of the process.
So much. That's so important. Kelsey, I know you're not able to speak from a policy perspective here, but I do think that you also wanted to share something on this question, and then feel free to go right into asking your question as well.
Sure, yeah. Well, I think I'm excited to hear already what the work is, what you're moving towards in this areas, but I do want to share a little bit about my current lived experience as a survivor that, I have years out of the relationship, I just would love to share this. So I'd like to request you consider the long arc when thinking of the economic impacts survivors in Vermont experience as a result of domestic violence. The damage extends far beyond the immediate crisis needs associated with fleeing the imminent danger. The economic impact is long lasting. The social and professional equity lost to survivors has a direct impact on our ability to maintain health and wellness for ourselves and our children. This includes our ability to retain housing and provide financially for our families. And some of you have already spoken about this. Thank you. I've maintained full-time employment throughout my journey as a survivor. I'm a single mother of 3 children receiving no child support. My abuser fraudulently took out loans and credit cards in my name, leaving me with debt and damage to my credit. My abuser fraudulently claimed my child on his taxes just last year, not only stealing a significant portion of my anticipated refund as a single mother, but also all COVID relief funds dispersed under my child's Social Security number. And this person has no contact with my child. As a survivor, I've experienced discrimination in more than one workplace. Again, I'm salaried positioned. I'm not a minimum wage worker. So I share that just again to express that this is an issue that all survivors experience. This occurred following media releases reporting my abuser's arrest and my name publicly released as a victim. I made a conscious choice after that to offer my voice and lived experience as a survivor publicly. This choice has led to my professionalism being under question on more than one occasion in my workplace. I cannot convey in words what it takes to get through each day, balancing the responsibility I carry between my professional life and my life as a single mother. When I slow down enough to think about it, I honestly do not know how I do it all. I do not share these reflections to seek accolades. I share it because I consider myself privileged. We are called survivors for a reason. I will say it again. I have years of separation from my abuser, yet my life continues to revolve around survival. And if it is this difficult for a white woman born into privilege and blessed with a stubborn, resilient loudmouth, I too am definitely a loudmouth. I beg those who have not experienced domestic violence to please imagine how nearly impossible survival can be for those not as privileged as myself. So yes, please raise the minimum wage. Please, please continue to work to offer support and lift up our voices. All right, my question, and you already started talking about it, so thank you. As a survivor who is interested in systemic change, what is the best way for me to use, all of us, to use our voices and experience? What are the effective strategies we can use as survivors to make a difference in our state laws and experience of survivors in Vermont?
Madam Speaker, do you want to start us?
Sure. Thank you. And Kelsey, I just have to say thank you, because that's incredibly brave and courageous. And that's so many things to be juggling at one time. Just dealing with COVID and family is hard enough. And to be experiencing that as well at the same time, it's an incredible amount to carry. And you just explained it so well in a way that I wish I could just put in front of members to really describe what that experience is, because until you have lived it, you don't understand how hard just the little, like even the little things are, whether, you know, you think you see that person at the grocery store and it triggers you and it changes everything. The financial burdens and challenges that come with it, the mental health of all of it, it is exhausting, right? It's exhausting. And so I'm just so grateful for you being willing to share your story and to ask, like, how can you do more of it? That's amazing. And there are so many things that you can do and others can do to help share their stories and raise awareness and help us with all different types of legislation that supports people, from housing to minimum wage to paid family leave to you know, the list goes on and on, right? I think sharing your stories with members, even if it's in small groups where it's less formal, is very helpful. And it's another way to spark conversations with members that might not have had the opportunity or time to speak with a survivor. So I think one-on-one work with legislators or whatever group that you're advocating for to change a policy, whether it's a city council or school board or state house, those one-on-one engagements and sharing your stories is extremely powerful. And in other ways, whether it's online with op-eds, you know, other ways just to help publicly share your story. And again, I'll just reflect that that is not easy. And I know that's not easy. And so if there are other ways that we can help share those stories in a public way that helps people feel safe still, but to share their story to help educate people and point out what's working and what's not working and why a certain policy is really important because of this situation goes up, it just goes a long way.
Tam, would you like to go next?
Yes, so so grateful that Jill spoke from the heart to you, Kelsey, because she was saying all the things that I was feeling. I think where I want to start is just to say you already have so much impact by being part of the network, being on this with us. I was just looking through the list of the attendees, and so in my other world, okay, I was a teacher for a long time, but I also was trained as a coach in authentic leadership. And one of the things that we always start from is that leadership is already within you. And you are having impact every day in how you're leading your life. You're impacting people around you in ways that you may not even understand. And so when you actually come to testify, like that's even another level of impact that you're having. And I think it's always really important to start from that, because I think often as women, we always feel like we should be doing more, even when we're exhausted, even when we're juggling so many things. I just want to say, you're already doing so much. And for you to be able to step back and say, hey, I'm already having an impact. And then everything on top of that is gravy. Okay, I just want to start with that. The other thing I want to say is that one of the ways that I've tried to communicate with my colleagues some of the older men that I work with who often have a frame that their experience is everyone's experience. And the thing that I've probably said more than anything else in my job as majority leader and as president pro tem is, your experience has not been my experience. As a woman, as a gay person, I wish we all did start from the same place, because they often say we all start for the same starting line. It's just what you do with it, right? And more than once I've had to say, I know that you believe that. I know you're not saying it to be annoying. I know you believe it, but I'm here to tell you it's fundamentally absolutely not true. And when you say it, it's offensive. And here are all the reasons why. That's the approach that I've taken, because I feel like until I have that conversation, I can't even get to the other things that I want from them, right? So the last thing I was thinking about as we were talking is that we need you to have allies when you come into a committee room, okay? My very first year in the legislature, I was on the Economic Development and Housing Committee. It's one of my committees that I've been on the entire time I've been in the Senate. My first year, and a woman came in and she was testifying on her struggles with substance use disorder and how she grew up in a family where many of her family members are also struggling. It was a raw bit of testimony, and she was unsure of herself, and I'm sure like she had never done anything like that. And she's looking around the room, and one person's knitting, one person's on their phone, another person scrolling on their iPad, someone is talking to the attorney. And these are not bad people. I mean, I want to put that out. These are legislators who are trying to do their job. Many of them are not, they're not trained in trauma-informed anything, right? They're not people who are, again, they're not trying to be hurtful. But I realized nobody's listening to this witness, and she is like laying it all out there. So one of the things I've been thinking about is making sure when there are folks from the network coming into a committee that you have someone within that committee that you can lock eyes with, and that committee member knows it's going to be on your responsibility when that witness comes in, that he or she knows that they can look at you and you will be a source of support for them, and that they can signal that actually I need to go out in the hallway and I need to talk about what just happened. And so, we are learning as we go, but that, I think, when I've seen harm happening in the legislature, unintentionally, it's often been because a witness didn't know who they could look to for that support, not just from the people who came with them, but from the legislators in the room. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I think that support is such a good point. And I actually want to offer Jess the opportunity to answer this too, because you were just at the State House.
I was. Yeah, that was such a really cool experience to be there, just to see where it all happens, especially not being from Vermont. It was a moment, but honestly, I was given that opportunity to be there in the State House because of my involvement with Survivors Uplift. And that's why I'm here today. It's been such a healing outlet for me as a sexual assault survivor. Now, I've had a great foundation and a great support by family and friends, which is wonderful. And I'm grateful that I have, but there's something different. There's something more relatable. There's something more validating when you are using your voice and sharing your story with a group of individuals that have been there before, that have seen the darkness. They understand the grief, the loneliness, and just those little tiny, those triggers, those things that we don't often think about, that, every time I see a black truck drive by, I immediately think of the man that assaulted me. So it's when you hear little things like that, and you hear someone else within the group say the similar thing, it makes you feel less alone. And we talk about systemic change within this uplift group because it needs to be bigger than all of us, because it is. And I know the term systemic change sounds so broad, because it is. I mean, it's very broad, but systemic change doesn't happen without individual change. And by us looking inward and inspecting our own beliefs and our own biases and thought processes and gaps in our own privilege as well as it relates to sexual violence and abuse, because I know that I had them up until being a survivor. And it's true. We've said it, you don't know what it's like. And I hope you never do if you haven't experienced sexual assault or abuse before, but you don't know what it's like until you're there. And so it's very important for us to be around other people to help end sexual violence and to truly eradicate rape. And really, as I kind of wrap this up, as a group, as this survivors uplift group of us coming together, using our voices in an empowered way, because a lot of us didn't have a say. I didn't get to fight back. I get to fight back now. And that is so important to me. We cannot allow sexual assault to be one of the easiest crimes to get away with in our society. And when we collectively come together and we are looking at ourselves also individually, that's when we can gain momentum. So if you're a survivor and you're listening to me, my cheeks are so flushed. I'm literally in a full circle moment right now because I'm sitting in the chair that I would sit in and watch outside the window for weeks after my sexual assault, waiting for my rapist to come finish the job. To come hurt my family, and to be here in an empowered way, sharing my story to then help create massive change for our children, your children, and future generations. That's exactly why we need more survivors in our group. Thank you.
Oh, Jess, that was so powerful. Thank you so much. And I will just echo that our Survivors Uplift group is something very special. And I'm glad you're all here with us tonight. We are running short on time, so I'm going to send it right to you, Pro Tem Ballant, to ask our next question.
Thank you. All right. I think one of the most important questions that I could ask is, what's one thing that you would want Vermont legislators and community members to know and understand about your experiences that you don't think that they know or understand? And it can be a small thing that is important to you, right? But something to give us more insight. And I know earlier, I think it was Kelsey who said that we don't understand the long arc of the trauma, the long arc of the experience. That was one thing that I wrote down. What are those other things that we don't fully understand?
Evelyn, would you like to start us off on this one?
Sure. Wow.
And it could be that we do our job so terribly that we actually, there's a lot of things that we don't know or understand. That is not
the case.
Okay.
I think Vermont legislators understand far better than some others that I've.
Nice to hear.
Yes, I've been around a while, and I think the thing that I would most want people to understand that there is no one face to any of these issues, whether we're talking about domestic violence, sexual violence, human trafficking. There is no one face. There's no one community, one neighborhood, one experience. None of us are immune to violence, and it's happening in every single community, in every neighborhood, in every economic class, in every, it is happening everywhere, all the time. And there are a lot of people out there that are feeling very isolated and very alone. And I think what they need to know from every one of us is that they aren't alone, and that we need to listen to them. We need to help them find their voice, and then we need to listen to them deeply listen to them when they use their voice. When survivors speak, the rest of us need to be quiet, and we need to listen to what they have to say and let them guide the conversation. And I think that that is, so many of us in the advocacy community, in the legislative community, we do what we do because we believe in our communities, we believe in our state. All of those things, we're in it for the right reasons. But we are often don't stop and listen. Our own voices get so elevated, and we project. We're in our communities all the time. We're talking. We're in the legislature. We're wherever. We need to be able to be quiet and listen to what survivors tell us and what our communities tell us, and then we'll find the way.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Avaloy.
Kelsey, do you want to follow up?
Really hard for me to narrow down to one. But I will say that it is, I really hope that we can continue to try to move towards deepening the awareness that this is a systemic issue, and that, yes, we need to listen and we need to uplift the voices and provide support and services with open arms. But we need to start investing more into prevention and looking at why do we keep creating more generations that are going to continue to perpetuate this cycle, because it's going to continue until we're ready to grapple with that hard question and actually invest in those changes. And that's going to take that commitment from, the older white guys that are stuck in the mindset maybe that this is what it is for everybody, and I'm really sorry that happened to you, but this is what it is. And that's a big ask, but that's what it's going to take, right? And so to continue to try to reach everyone, and to continue to, hopefully find ways to gain collaboration and interest, because it does impact all of us. And again, what's already been said, there is no one face, but the reality is that it is quite a bit harder to leave the situation and to get some sort of stability in your life, even if you're going to have continued and ongoing trauma from our society's lack of understanding. It's a lot harder to do that when you do not have access to the privilege that someone like I have. And I guess I also just, the unintentional harm that's caused from well-intentioned society of looking the other way. I don't know what to say, and I don't want to offend you, so I'm just not going to say anything. I'm going to look the other way. And that's me being supportive, wanting to respect your experience. It's so important to me as a survivor that's been impacted by that a lot and continue to be, despite how loud I am about it, is that actually continues to add to the trauma, right? This is something that we will not talk about. This is shameful.
Yeah.
So that's more than one thing, but I think it's all wrapped up.
It's all good. I mean, that last piece was gold, Kelsey. It really was. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jess.
I would say the simplest way and the easiest way to extend support to us is to start by believing us. Start by believing us, and you might believe in your heart. You might say that, and not you, I mean, us as a human collective might think that you believe survivors, but watch how it shows up in your day-to-day. Watch when you're watching a show and you think, and somebody says they've been sexually assaulted, and you think, okay, come on. Or you think, I mean, she was drinking. Or, just watch that. And then also be okay calling each other out for that bad behavior. Be okay, even when you say it yourself, calling yourself out in front of people and saying, hey, wait, you know what? Let me stop. That was not the language that I should have used. I need to change that. That's important. But then I want to, and I'll be brief for time so Jessica doesn't, get on me. But I want to kind of illustrate some of the changes in the need for training, trauma-informed training. So Like I mentioned earlier, I'd spent many, many nights, almost weeks, sitting in front of this very window, watching down 128. I live in Essex. The cars go by. I could not sleep. And I had gone finally a few days after the assault to file a restraining order, and I was denied because while I was at the police station, somehow they called the wrong division of the courts, a 5-hour plus ordeal in which I was telling my story over and over and over again. That left me with a denied protection order, left me with a panic attack, caused me to faint, and landed me in the ER. I was also told by a doctor there that I was just there to get drugs and that I needed to calm down and to be on my way. After I had just stated I was sexually assaulted 3 days earlier. He put his hands on me. He did not ask to put his hands on me, and he did a lot of harm that night. I got a medical bill from this situation, from an emergency visit that I did not want to take because I knew at the police station I was having a panic attack. Very aware of what that is and what that does to my body. But again, I didn't have a decision over my body, and I was put in an ambulance and sent to the ER to be further traumatized. That cannot happen. Our future generations, they deserve so much better. And so do many of the survivors. In the time that, we just are coming up on an hour, every 68 seconds is the new statistic that somebody is sexually assaulted. That means nearly 60 humans were raped while we were on this call. We deserve better training and we deserve to be believed.
Wow, Jess, what a powerful thing to end us on. We are out of time. I feel like we could continue this discussion for hours and hours, and there's so much more for us to talk about and really dig into, but want to respect all of our time. And so before we sign off, I just want to say thank you to all of our fantastic panelists for this really honest and authentic conversation that you all shared tonight, and for really being honest and vulnerable with all of us and all of us who are watching. I think everybody is going to take away some really great things from this, and hopefully will use it to change in their lives and to make the systemic change that we all know we need. So thank you, panelists, all of you, for being here and for sharing with us. And thank you to everyone who joined us in the webinar and live on Facebook. Please reach out and find out more about our Survivors Uplift group on our website and all of our ongoing policy work and how you can get more involved. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon and having more of these really rich discussions. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For having us.
Thank
Take
you
care.
so much.
Be well. Be safe, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.